The week I passed my CPA exam, my brother bought a boat. Not a small one. A 24-foot bayliner with a GPS fish finder and a retractable canopy. He posted it on Facebook the same afternoon I got my results email. 47 people liked his boat. 3 people knew I'd passed. My mother was one of the 47. She commented a little anchor emoji and wrote, "Our boy deserves this," with 2 exclamation points. She didn't text me until the following morning. "Congrats on the test thing, sweetie. You should come celebrate with Lorne this weekend. He's taking the boat out." That was 4 years ago. I'm 31 now. I live in Denver and I own a 2-bedroom condo on the east side of the city with a view of the Rockies that I didn't tell my family about for 11 months. What happened when they found out changed things in a way I'm still processing. But let me go back, because none of what came later makes sense without the part that came first. I grew up in Millhaven, Indiana. Population 8,000, 1 stoplight, a Casey's General Store, and a strong collective belief that boys carried the family name and girls married into someone else's. My parents, who I'll call my mother and my father, had 2 kids. Lorne, who was 3 years older, and me. My father worked at the paper mill outside of town. My mother ran the household the way generals run operations. Everything had a chain of command, and Lorne sat at the top of it. He was loud and funny and took up space the way only people who've never been told to shrink themselves can. I was quiet and careful, and got straight A's through high school in a house where that was treated like a personality flaw. The refrigerator thing at our house wasn't photos. It was the whiteboard on the garage door. My father used it to track Lorne's stats during baseball season. Batting average, RBIs, ERA when he pitched. He updated it after every game. I won the state academic decathlon my junior year. My mother took a photo on her phone. The whiteboard stayed baseball. I told myself it didn't matter. I was going to college. I had a full academic scholarship to Indiana University. I told myself the whiteboard was just a whiteboard. I graduated from IU with a degree in accounting. Highest honors. Then I went straight into a master's program, worked part-time at a firm in Bloomington. Passed all 4 sections of the CPA exam on the first attempt, which fewer than 20% of candidates do, and took a job at a mid-size firm in Denver, because they offered me a salary my mother would have called made-up money, and because Denver was 18 hours from Millhaven. I wasn't running away. That's what I told myself. I was just going toward something. The first year, I called home every Sunday. My mother would give me 20 minutes before steering the conversation back to Lorne. His job at the auto parts distributor. His girlfriend, Becca. His plans to buy a house. His boat. The boat was a recurring topic for about 6 months. I'd set up a budget. I was living carefully, paying down my student loans, saving aggressively. I was 27 and proud of how I was managing things. Then the first call came. It was a Tuesday night. My mother and her voice had that particular quality. Soft at the edges, the tone she used when she needed something and didn't want to ask for it directly. "Sweetheart, your father's back has been giving him trouble. The mill reduced his hours. We're a little short this month, just temporarily." I asked how much. $800, just for bills? You know we wouldn't ask if we didn't need to. $800. I made the transfer that week. The month after, she called again. $900 this time, something with the water heater. The month after that, a different number, a different reason, the same soft-edged voice. By the end of the first year, I had sent my parents $11,400. I told myself it was fine. I was their daughter. My father's back was genuinely bad. I'd seen it over Christmas, the way he moved carefully getting out of chairs. I told myself families helped each other and that this was temporary. Temporary is a flexible word. What I didn't do, and this is the part that's hard to say out loud now, is ask for receipts. I didn't ask which bills. I didn't ask for their bank statements. I didn't ask to see a doctor's note or an explanation of benefits. I'm a CPA. I audit financial records for a living. And I transferred money to my parents every month for 3 years without asking a single verifying question. I've thought a lot about why. The closest I can get to an honest answer is this. Some numbers you don't want to add up because you're afraid of what the sum will be. By the time I met my colleague Theo, no wait, I need different names. Let me think. By the time I started talking to my coworker Kit, who became my closest friend in Denver, I had been sending money home for almost 2 years. Kit is a forensic accountant. She finds fraud for a living. She has the particular quality of people who are good at their jobs. She notices things other people don't want noticed. One afternoon, we were getting lunch and I mentioned offhand that I was tight on money that month because of the transfer home. She put down her fork. How long have you been doing that? About 2 years? How much per month, roughly? I told her the range. 800 to 1200 depending on the month. She was quiet for a moment. What exactly is the money for? My dad's hours got cut. Bills, mostly. Do you know which bills? I didn't. I said I trusted my parents. Kit has a way of looking at you that isn't unkind but is completely without flinching. Do you know what their mortgage situation is? I said I assumed they had one. They'd bought the house in 1994. So they've been paying for 30 years. I nodded. On a house in Millhaven, Indiana? I told her to stop doing the math out loud. She did stop. For about a week. Then she texted me a link to a county property records website and said, I just looked it up. You can too. You don't have to do anything with it, but you might want to know. I didn't click the link for 9 days. I know it was 9 days because I remember exactly what I was doing when I finally opened it. I was sitting on my kitchen floor eating leftovers at 10 p.m. after a long audit. I had my laptop open next to me, and I opened the link. The property record for the house on Crestline Drive, Millhaven, Indiana. Mortgage status, satisfied. Payoff date, June 2021. I had started sending money in September 2021. I sat on my kitchen floor for a long time after that. The leftover pasta got cold. I didn't eat it. I'm going to pause here for a second. Because I want to ask you something, and I want you to actually sit with it. If you found out the money you'd been sending home for years wasn't going where you were told, what would you do? Would you confront it immediately? Or would you do what I did, which was close the laptop and not think about it for 3 days? Because that's what I did. I closed it. I made coffee. I went to work. I told myself there might be an explanation. There wasn't. 3 days later, I ran the numbers properly. 27 months of transfers, amounts ranging from $800 to $1,300. Total sent $28,400 for a mortgage that had been paid off before I sent the first dollar. I didn't call my mother that night. I called my aunt instead, my father's younger sister, who lives in Fort Wayne and who I've always been closer to than most of the family. I'll call her my aunt. She picked up on the second ring. I need to ask you something, I said, and I need you to be honest with me even if it's uncomfortable. There was a pause. The kind that means someone has been waiting for a specific conversation. Okay, she said. How long has the house been paid off? A longer pause. Oh, sweetheart. That's all she said for a moment. Then, your mother told us you were helping with ongoing expenses. Upkeep, utilities, that kind of thing. She said you offered. I had never offered. She told me you two had an arrangement, my aunt continued carefully. That it was your idea, that you felt guilty about leaving for Denver. There it was. I didn't feel guilty about Denver. I loved Denver. But my mother had constructed a version of me who did, and she'd shared that version with the family for 2.5 years. My aunt said one more thing before we hung up. She said, Lorne got a new truck in February. Your mom mentioned you helped with the down payment. I had made no such payment. I want to be precise about what I felt next, because it wasn't just anger. Anger is hot and immediate. This was something colder. It was the feeling of watching a structure you thought was load-bearing turn out to be decorative. All those months of, we're just a little short, and just until things stabilize, they weren't cries for help. They were withdrawals. And I was the account. The next 2 weeks, I did what I do at work. I organized. Bank statements going back 27 months. Every transfer, every date, every amount. I cross-referenced with the property record. I pulled Lorne's truck from the county vehicle registration database, a 2022 Ram 1500, registered in February, 2 months after my mother mentioned they needed help with a large bill, and I'd sent $1,100. I'm not a confrontational person by nature. I don't like scenes. I don't like raised voices. I spent most of my childhood being the one who smoothed things over, because Lorne was the one who made things worse, and someone had to balance the equation. But there's a difference between keeping peace and absorbing damage. I had spent 27 months absorbing damage and calling it love. I put everything in a folder on my desktop. I printed 2 copies. I put them in my bag. And I waited, because I had a feeling I wouldn't have to wait long. I was right. 3 weeks later, my mother called. She opened the way she always did. Soft, anecdotal, a story about a neighbor, a question about my job. Then the pivot. Sweetheart, Lorne and Becca are going through a rough patch. He lost his distribution route and they're behind on the boat payments. I was thinking you've always been the responsible one. I didn't say anything. Just 2 months to help him get back on his feet. Mom. My voice was steady. I'd been practicing steadiness for 3 weeks. I need to ask you something first. What is the current mortgage balance on the house? Silence, not just a pause. A held silence, the kind that has weight. What does that have to do with anything? I'd like to know where the money I've been sending has been going. Her voice shifted. Not loud. My mother never got loud. It got smooth, the way a river gets smooth right before it drops. I can't believe you're questioning me after everything your father and I have sacrificed. I'm not questioning your sacrifice. I'm asking about my money. Your money. She said it the way you'd say a word in a foreign language you didn't quite understand. So that's how we're doing this now. Mom. The house has been paid off since June 2021. I've been sending transfers since September 2021. Dialed in sending transfers since September 2021. Silence again. Different quality this time. Harder. I don't know where you're getting your information. Public county property records. It's a free search. She said she had to go. She said my father needed her. She said I'd been in Denver too long and I'd forgotten what family meant. And then she hung up. I sat with the phone in my hand for a while. She hadn't denied it. She had pivoted. She had deflected. She had made me the problem. But she hadn't said the number was wrong. She hadn't said the house still had a mortgage. She hadn't said anything that wasn't a detour away from the question. I had my answer. The invitation to the family gathering came 6 weeks later. My cousin, my mother's brother's daughter, who I've always gotten along with, sent a group text. 4th of July weekend. Grandma Rose's house in Millhaven. Everybody's coming. Bring a dish. My mother followed up with a private text. It would mean so much if you came. It's been too long. Things have been hard and I think we all just need family right now. I had not been to Millhaven in 18 months. The last time, my mother had introduced me to their church friends as the one who moved away. Not our accountant daughter. Not the one who just got promoted. Just the one who moved away. I texted back, I'll be there. Kit thought I was making a mistake. She sat across from me in my kitchen the night before I drove to the airport and said, You don't have to do this. You could just stop the transfers and not explain anything. They told the family I've been sending money voluntarily, I said. They told them it's my idea. I want to look at my grandmother's face and let her hear the actual version. Kit looked at me for a long moment. Okay, she said. Do you need me to come? No. I picked up my bag. I've got everything I need in here. I flew into Indianapolis and rented a car. 2 hours to Millhaven. I pulled up to Grandma Rose's house on a Saturday afternoon and counted the cars. I counted 11. The gathering was bigger than the text had implied. I could see through the front window that the porch was full and the backyard had a folding table set up under the elm tree my grandfather planted in 1978. My mother came to the door before I knocked. She pulled me into a hug that smelled like sunscreen and potato salad. "My girl," she said, loud enough for the porch to hear. "She made it." Inside, my grandmother, my aunt, 2 uncles, several cousins, neighbors from down the street, my father sitting in a lawn chair by the back window, and Lorne. Lorne was standing by the drink cooler, with a red cup and a new haircut, and when he saw me he did a chin lift that I think was supposed to be a greeting. The afternoon was loud and easy on the surface, the way family gatherings are when everyone has agreed without discussing it to stay on the surface. I ate potato salad. My aunt asked about Denver. One of my uncles told a long story about a fishing trip. My grandmother held my hand and told me I looked thin. My father mostly stayed in his chair. He and I made eye contact twice. The second time, he held it a little longer than the first, and there was something in it I couldn't name yet. Then the afternoon shifted. My mother stood up from the picnic bench and clinked her glass. The yard went quiet the way yards do when someone clearly has something planned. "I want to say something," she said, and she was smiling the smile I'd grown up watching. Wide and warm and precise. "We're so lucky to have family that shows up for each other. I know things have been tight lately, and I just want to say how grateful we are that our girl in Denver has always stepped up." She looked at me. "Isn't that right, sweetheart? And I know she's going to keep doing that for Lorne and Becca while they get things sorted." I had not agreed to anything. Lorne raised his cup. Becca, his girlfriend, wiped her eye. My grandmother looked at me with that particular expression of grandmothers everywhere. Love and expectation fused into one look. My mother tilted her head. "Do you want to say something, honey?" 14 faces turned toward me. The elm tree. The folding table. The same yard where I'd watched my brother get a standing ovation for a home run he hit at age 12 while I sat in the back row of the car reading a library book. I set down my cup. "Actually," I said, "I do want to say something." I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. I didn't rush. I opened it the way I open client files at work, methodically, without performance. I pulled out 2 sheets of paper. "For the last 27 months, I said, I've been sending money home every month. My mother sent me advice for household expenses because my father's hours at the mill had been reduced." I looked at my father. He was looking at the ground. "I sent a total of $28,400. The yard went very quiet. Someone's kid dropped a plastic cup, and the sound of it hitting the grass was very loud. I looked up the property record for the house on Crestline Drive last month." I held up the first sheet. "Mortgage status, satisfied. Payoff date, June 2021. I began sending transfers in September 2021. I paused. "The house has been fully paid off this entire time." I set the paper on the folding table where anyone could read it. My grandmother put her hand over her mouth. My uncle reached forward and picked up the paper. My mother's smile didn't vanish. It froze, the particular freeze of an expression that has been maintained by effort and is now struggling to find new instructions. "Bryn, this isn't," she caught herself. "Start it again." "This is not the time for, you chose the time," I said. "You asked me to say something." My aunt, my father's sister, who I'd called 3 weeks ago, stood up slowly from her chair. She looked at my mother with an expression I'd never seen on her face before. "Ellen, is this true?" My mother opened her mouth. "Because," my aunt continued, "you told me the arrangement was Bryn's idea. You told me she offered, and 3 weeks ago, she called me and told me she'd never offered anything." The yard shifted. It was a subtle thing, like a room tilting 2 degrees, but I felt it. My uncle, who'd been holding the property record, passed it to his wife. She read it and set it down on the table in front of her like she was setting down something that had gotten heavy. My grandmother looked at my mother. "Ellen." Just the name. It was enough. Lorne, to his credit or his self-preservation, did not say a word. He stood by the drink cooler with his red cup and looked at Becca, and Becca looked at the ground. My mother turned to my father, looking for support, looking for the alignment she'd always been able to count on. My father was looking at me. I'd seen my father be quiet my entire life. He was quiet the way large objects are quiet, present, heavy, difficult to move. He'd been quiet when I graduated high school and my mother forgot to plan a dinner. He'd been quiet when I told them about the Denver job and she said, "Why do you always have to be so far away?" He'd been quiet for so many things that I'd stopped expecting sound from him. He cleared his throat. "The money didn't go to the mortgage," he said. His voice was rough and low, and the yard went even quieter. I knew that. I should have said something. I didn't. He looked at his hands. "I'm sorry, Nora. That's my name, Nora." It was the first time he'd said it in that yard in a long time. My mother said, "Glenn, don't, I'm done," my father said. Not loud, just final. He stood up from his lawn chair, set his plate on the seat, and walked to the other side of the yard. He sat down next to his sister, my aunt. She put her hand on his arm. My mother stood at the picnic table, looking at the space where her version of events had just been. Her face cycled through several expressions: wounded, righteous, wronged. She settled on wounded, because that was usually the most effective. "I did what I had to do for this family," she said. "If you want to stand there in front of everyone and make me the villain, Nora, then I don't know who you've become." "I haven't become anything, Mom." My voice was even. "I just started asking where my money went." My grandmother stood up. She is 81 years old and approximately 5'2", and she has never in my memory raised her voice at anyone. "She doesn't have to," she said. "Ellen, where did the money go?" My mother looked at her own mother, and for the first time in the afternoon, she didn't have an answer ready. The silence stretched. Then my cousin, my uncle's daughter, the one who'd organized the gathering, said quietly from her seat at the far end of the table, "Aunt Ellen, the truck." The yard looked at Lorne. Lorne's jaw tightened. "Leave it alone, Pam." "What truck?" my grandmother asked. My cousin looked at me, asking permission with her eyes. I nodded. "Lorne got a new Ram 1500 in February," she said. "I saw it when I was visiting. He said Aunt Ellen helped with the down payment." She paused. I thought that was strange, because I knew Nora had been sending money home. My mother said, "That has nothing to do with." "How much was the down payment?" my uncle asked. The yard looked at my mother. Lorne set his cup down on the cooler and walked inside. The screen door closed behind him. He didn't come back out. My mother sat down. It was less a choice than a thing that happened to her body when the structure holding it up gave way. I pulled out the second sheet. The timeline, transfers, dates, amounts, stated purpose versus verified mortgage status. 2 clean columns. No commentary. "I'm not asking anyone to choose a side," I said. "I'm showing you what the numbers say. Anyone who wants to see it can look." I set it on the table next to the property record. My grandmother picked it up. She read slowly the way she reads everything, with full attention. She set it down. She folded her hands in her lap. "I'd like to speak with you privately," she said to my mother. "After." My mother nodded. She had the look of someone who has realized they are no longer the one controlling what happens next. The gathering broke apart slowly, the way ice does. First one edge, then another. Neighbors said their goodbyes. Cousins helped carry dishes inside. My father stayed sitting next to his sister. They talked quietly for a while. I could see them from where I stood, but couldn't hear what they said. Before I went inside, my uncle stopped beside me. He'd held the property record for a while, this particular uncle who was retired and careful about what he said. He looked at me and said, "I owe you a phone call I should have made a long time ago." I told him it wasn't his fault. He shook his head. "She told us you didn't like to talk, that you'd gotten too busy for family." I took her word for it. He paused. "I shouldn't have." Later that evening, after most people had left, I sat on the back porch steps with my grandmother. She brought 2 glasses of sweet tea. We sat and watched the fireflies come out over the backfield. How long were you going to keep sending it? She asked. I didn't know there was a reason to stop. She nodded. She was quiet for a while. Your mother loves you, she said. I want you to know I believe that. But love and honesty aren't always the same thing, and she has always had trouble with that second one. I looked at the fireflies. You're right to do what you did, she said. You're right to say no, and I'm going to have a conversation with your mother that is 40 years overdue. She patted my knee. You should go be in Denver. You should go be whatever you've built there. We'll handle what happens here. I drove to the airport the next morning. My father came out to the driveway before I pulled away. He stood by the car window with his hands in his pockets. I'm not going to make excuses, he said. I know. She ran things. I let her. That's the truth of it. I looked at him, this man who had been large and quiet my entire childhood, who I had wanted to see me so many times and hadn't known how to ask him to look. I know, Dad. I'm going to fix the whiteboard, he said. I almost asked which one. Then I realized he meant the one in the garage, the one that only ever had Lauren's stats. I didn't say anything. I put the car in reverse. He stepped back. In the rearview mirror, he stood in the driveway watching me go. He didn't go back inside until I turned the corner. Here is what changed after that weekend. The transfers stopped. I had already canceled them before I got on the plane to Indianapolis, but I want to name it clearly. 27 months of automatic payments ended. $28,400 now stays in my account per year. I didn't do anything dramatic with it. I put it toward my condo. I bought a road bike. I went to a concert Kit had been trying to get me to go to for 6 months. My mother texted me twice in the 2 weeks after. The first was, I hope you're proud of yourself for what you did to this family. The second, 4 days later, I've been under a lot of pressure, and I just need you to understand that. Neither one said I'm sorry. Neither one said I lied. Neither one started with anything other than her own position. I read them, left them unread, and went on with my day. My father called on a Sunday. We talked for 12 minutes. He told me about a car he was restoring in the garage. I told him about a trail I'd been running on the weekends. We didn't mention my mother. We didn't need to. The call itself was the point. He called again the following Sunday. Lauren texted me once. It said, "That was messed up, Nora. You didn't have to do that in front of everyone." I wrote back, "You're right that it could have happened privately. Mom chose the stage." He didn't respond. I wasn't looking for a response. I was just being accurate. My grandmother did have the conversation with my mother. She didn't tell me the details, but she called me 2 weeks later and said, "I think some things are clearer now." She also said, "I found out she told people at church you'd had some kind of mental breakdown from work stress." I corrected that. I thanked her. She said, "Don't thank me. I'm your grandmother. It's the minimum." I think about the whiteboard sometimes, about the way I stood in that garage at 14 and understood, without anyone having to say it, that the scoreboard wasn't for me. I think about how long I spent trying to earn my way onto it. The scholarships, the exam scores, the promotions, and how none of it updated the board, because the board wasn't about achievement. It was about who my mother had already decided mattered. You can't win a game that's rigged before you start. The only move is to stop playing and go build your own scoreboard. My condo has a wall in the second bedroom I've turned into a kind of office. I have my CPA certificate hung there, and a photo from a hiking trip last summer, and a postcard my grandmother sent after the gathering. Just her handwriting. No card. A piece of notepad paper that says, "I see you. I always have, Grandma Rose." I hung it next to the certificate. I didn't move to Denver to prove anything. I moved because I wanted one place where the rules were the ones I'd made, where the scoreboard was mine, where I turned the key and knew every square foot of it was the product of my own work. No one else's name on it. No one else's version of me living inside it. The Rockies look different in every season. Right now, they're starting to go gold at the edges. That early fall thing that lasts about 3 weeks if you're lucky. I have a coffee at my kitchen table and the windows open and the air smells like pine and cool and altitude. Last Sunday my phone rang. My father. 17 minutes this time. He told me about the car. I told him about a project at work. At the end he said, "Your grandmother talks about you a lot." I said, "Good things?" "She brags," he said. Every time someone asks, I pressed my lips together so he wouldn't hear me smile through the phone. That's where things stand. It's not a resolution in the way movies do resolutions. Ribbon tied, everyone learned their lesson. The family sits around a table in good faith. Some things don't reconstitute once they've been what they were. My mother's texts still start with her own position. Lauren still has the boat. Some structures are what they are. But I have my father's Sunday calls. I have my grandmother's postcard. I have Kid across the table at lunch telling me the math on my retirement projections looks solid. I have the Rockies going gold outside my window, and a condo no one co-signed, and a whiteboard that's mine, and blank, and waiting for whatever I decide to put on it. If you're listening to this, and there's someone in your life who keeps calling it family when they mean something else, when what they mean is obligation, or leverage, or a debt they've decided you owe them for existing, I want you to hear this. You don't owe anyone your financial future as proof of your love. Asking where your money goes is not betrayal. It is the most basic form of self-respect. The people who call it selfish when you stop absorbing damage are the same people who benefited from your capacity to absorb it. Their definition of selfishness is just another word for your limits. I learned that at 31, sitting in a backyard in Indiana with a folder of bank statements and a property record that told the truth when no one else would. I'm still learning what it costs and what it's worth. Most days the math comes out clearly in my favor. Drop your story in the comments if any of this hit close. I read every single one, and I mean that. And if you want to keep listening, there's another story linked below. Different family, different numbers, same kind of reckoning. Take care of yourself. Your name is yours. Don't let anyone else put it on something you didn't sign. I've thought a lot about what actually happened in that backyard in Millhaven. Not the confrontation part. I've replayed that enough. I mean the part before it. The years of it. The quiet, monthly erosion of my own financial stability. Done willingly, done lovingly. Done without a single verifying question from a woman who audits other people's numbers for a living. That's the part that stays with me, not my mother's choices. Mine. There's something that happens when you grow up as the invisible one. The one whose honor roll certificate ends up in the recycling bin. The one whose milestone gets a 2-line text while her brother's boat gets 47 likes. You learn very early that your worth in that house is conditional, and conditional worth has to be re-earned constantly. So you keep paying. Not just in money. In patience, in availability, in the quiet agreement to need less than you're owed. You pay because somewhere underneath all the math you actually understand, there's a child who still believes that if you're useful enough, someone will finally update the scoreboard. That's not weakness. I want to be clear about that. It takes real strength to keep showing up for people who've taught you not to expect much back. The mistake isn't caring. The mistake is letting care become a substitute for clarity. What I know now at 31 is that those two things, love and honesty, have to run together, or neither one works. My mother loved me in whatever way she was capable of. I don't doubt that entirely, but she built a version of our family that depended on my not asking questions, and she was very good at making the questions feel like betrayals. Every time I got close to something real, where's the money going? Why wasn't the mortgage mentioned? Why does Lauren's truck keep coming up? She had a pivot ready. Tears, or guilt, or the invocation of my father's health. Not answers. Detours. The thing about detours is they work until you stop following them. Kit asked me once, after everything, if I regretted going to the gathering instead of just canceling the transfers quietly and moving on. I thought about it honestly. The answer is no, not because the confrontation was comfortable. It wasn't. My hands were cold the entire time I was talking. But my grandmother was in that yard. My aunt was in that yard. My father was in that yard. My father was in that yard, and they had been handed a version of me for 4 years. The distant daughter, the one too busy for family, the one who'd gone cold since Denver. And I needed them to have access to a different set of facts. You can't control what people believe about you, but you can put the truth on the table and let them decide what to do with it. That's all I did. I put 2 pieces of paper on a folding table in my grandmother's backyard and let the numbers say what they said. My father calling on Sundays now? That's a direct result of that afternoon. My grandmother's postcard on my wall. My aunt's apology that she didn't call sooner. None of that happens if I take the quiet exit. Some truths only get room to breathe when you stop protecting the people who've been suffocating them. Nora spent 4 years being the family's answer to a question nobody asked out loud. The question was, who's going to carry this? And the answer was always whoever doesn't push back. That's how these things work. Not through cruelty necessarily, but through the path of least resistance. And the person with the most capacity, the most guilt, the most need to be needed, becomes the load-bearing wall. I stopped being a wall. I became a door instead. Open in one direction, closed in another, and entirely mine to operate. That's enough. That's actually more than enough.